Fly fishing shouldn't be complicated. If you're like me and you're just getting into fly fishing, you want to know how to set your rod up in a simple way and go fishing. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. Let's break it down. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dishes and Fishes, where I show you how to cook and set hooks. It was always kind of unclear to me on how to set up my fly rod when fishing dry flies, nymphs, and streamers until I started fishing with my brother-in-law, Captain Nick, quite a bit recently. So today I want to share with you guys exactly how to set up your fly rod, including the different lines and the different knots to fish these three ways. So let's get into it. And the equipment that we use on this channel is mainly 5-weight and 6-weight fly rods, fishing for trout, maybe some bass, and that sort of thing. So the first thing that you should know is that your line from your reel is typically broken down into 3 or 2 parts. You've got your fly line, which is this heavy, colorful line that's used for casting. After the fly line, you've got your leader material, which a lot of the time you can buy in these tapered leader packages. You don't always need this though, but this is kind of the standard. A tapered leader that goes from thick to thin. And then you've got your tippet, which is a very, very thin diameter line that you tie onto the end of your tapered leader. So it's 3 components generally. Let's talk about tapered leaders. So when you buy tapered leaders, they're going to come in all different prices, and they're going to give you a size value. In this case, this is 6X. I've also got 7X here. I've got 5X. The lower the X number, the stronger the line. The higher the X number, as in 7, the weaker the line. These tapered leaders are all going to have their own breaking strength. So this 7X tapered leader has a breaking strength of 2.5, while the 6, the lower number, has a breaking strength of 3.9 pounds. The trade-off is usually with strength comes more visible line. So it really depends on what fish you're targeting when it comes to selecting the size of your leader. 5 gets me through most situations, but recently fishing really finicky fish at the Delaware River, we had to go up to 7X. But either way, you're going to need to get some of these tapered leaders. I would get some 5s and 6s. Next, when you buy your tapered leaders, it's going to come with a length. You can see these are 7.5, this one's 9, this one's 12. I tend to like those longer leaders, the 9, 10, 11, 12 foot ones, especially if you're fishing for trout. It seems that these long leaders, while they're difficult to cast at times, they're really going to ensure that your presentation is the most natural, and they're going to give the fish less to see. So when you purchase these tapered leaders, they're going to usually come with a loop manufactured into the thick end. Sometimes that loop is not there and you have to tie it yourself. Let's talk about how to do that. This knot is called the perfection loop, and it's an essential knot to have in your fly fishing arsenal for both fly line and leaders in the event that you need to make a loop. Step 1 is to create a loop with the tag end of the line around the back side. We're going to just call this the top of the loop. You're then going to take your tag end and wrap it around the top of the loop, and you're going to create what I'm going to call loop A. Pinch both loops together and place your tag end in between them, like this. Last step is to reach through the back of the top of the loop and pull loop A through the loop. Pull it snug, and that is all set. The perfection loop. Really easy. Cut that tag and you're ready to go. In order to connect your fly line loop to your tapered leader loop, I want you to remember one thing. Line through leader, leader through line. Always remember that, and it's really easy. The connection between your fly line and your leader line is called a loop-to-loop connection. So for this demo, pretend the line on the right is a tapered leader, the line on the left is your fly line. So remembering line through leader, leader through line, I'm going to put my fly line through my leader. Fly line's going through the big part of my leader, and then my leader, skinny end, is going through my fly line. Fly line through leader, leader through fly line. Just like that, give each tag end a pull. They should slide together and form what they call a little handshake here. Satisfying. Very, very satisfying. So we've got our fly line connected to our tapered leader. Now let's talk about our tapered leader to our tippet. You want to tie on some tippet because 1, it's really, really invisible, and 2, it allows you to kind of change flies easily and frequently. So just like tapered leaders, your tippets are going to give you X values, and just like my tapered leaders, I'm carrying 5, 6, and 7X tippet. The lower the X value, the higher the pound test, the higher the breaking strength. You're going to be pretty good if you have 5 and 6X tippet in most situations. But one of the key things that I learned when tying tippet to tapered leader is that the line diameter of your tippet should be similar to that of the end of your tapered leader. So match those things up as best you can and tie those together. So when you're ready to tie your tippet onto your tapered leader, you're going to stretch out a 3 feet long length or so piece of tippet, cut it off, and you're going to tie it to your tapered leader using a double surgeon's knot. It's super easy. Let me show you how to do it. So for this demonstration, the line on the left is our tapered leader, the skinny end, and line on the right is our piece of tippet that we cut off of our spool. Step 1 here is to overlap these lines. Make sure you give yourself enough here because you're going to make a loop similar to what you did when you started the perfection loop. Then you're going to pinch that loop together. Notice here my tag ends are on the right. I'm going to take those tag ends and I'm going to put them around the front of my loop, pinch it together, reach around the back of the loop, and pull them through. Then I'm just going to do that same thing again. Put those tag ends around the front, give them a pinch, reach around the back, and pull them through. Some guys do this 3 times, the triple surgeon's knot. Make sure you also wet these knots before you cinch them down. So we've got our fly line connected to our tapered leader with a loop-to-loop connection, and we've got our tapered leader connected to our tippet with a double surgeon's knot. We're ready to rig it up. Let's talk about a dry fly rig first. So dry flies are flies that float on top of the water. This time of year, summer, it's really good dry fly fishing. One thing that I would recommend when fishing dry flies is to always carry some sort of floatant. I use this floatant oil. You rub the oil on the dry fly before you cast it out, and it kind of acts as like a anti-water material. It makes the fly float a little bit better. Some guys use the powder where you put the dry fly in the powder, shake it around. Regardless, you want to make sure that you have some sort of floatant in your bag at all times. If there's one thing I've learned that really amazes me after fly fishing, is that your presentation really matters. So if your dry fly is sinking, it's not going to work. Even if you're throwing the exact same bug that they're eating, it's got to look like the flies that they're eating. You can tie a dry fly directly onto the bottom of your tippet using an improved clinch knot. So the improved clinch knot is probably like the first line that your dad teaches you when you're a little kid, but we're going to review it just because you tie it so often in fly fishing. So I'll put my line through the eye of my hook or the bend of my hook, and I will twist that around 5 to 6 times. I'll take my tag end, I will tuck it through the initial loop that I created, and then I will tuck it back through the loop that was created when I did that step, and then that's really it. After you wet that knot, make sure you slide it the whole way down to your hook, snug it up, and it's good to go. And don't forget, that's the same knot that you want to use if you add tippet to the bottom of a fly. If you want to throw 2 dry flies, you can tie another piece of tippet onto the hook bend of your dry fly. And you're going to do that with just an improved clinch knot, the same knot that you use to tie the dry fly onto your actual line. And you want that second piece of tippet to be 12 to 18 inches. And you can tie on a second dry fly. Shout out Captain Nick for showing me that. So after you tie on your dry fly to either your tippet or your 2 dry flies, and you have your floatant on them, you're ready to go fishing. And it's probably the funnest way to fly fish. Fish on! Now let's talk about nymphing. Nymphing is a fly fishing technique where the nymphs are underwater, and it's a technique that can work all year round. If you watched my recent fly fishing in Connecticut video, we were fishing with nymphs in that video, but let's talk about how you set that up. So you always want to throw 2 nymphs when you're nymphing. It kind of depends on the water speed, the arrangement of your nymphs. In the video, we were throwing the heavier nymphs up top. So how do you tie that on? When you tie your double surgeon's knot, the knot from your tippet to your leader, you're going to tie the first nymph to one of the tag ends on the double surgeon's knot. This is called a dropper tag rig. So flashback quickly to the double surgeon's knot that we tied earlier in the video. You're left with these 2 tag ends. You're going to trim one of the tag ends and you're going to leave one, and that tag end up here is the one that you're going to tie your first nymph. You can then put your split shot above that nymph. Then on the bottom of your tippet, you're going to tie your second nymph. And usually that's going to be 18 to 24 inches away from your top nymph. I never knew that until this year. If you're using a strike indicator, you want that strike indicator to be 1.5 times the depth of the water from your bottom nymph. If you're not using a strike indicator, you want to just make sure that you're maintaining contact with that fly throughout the drift, or else you're not going to detect the bite. I would recommend if you're starting out to use a strike indicator. That's a nymphing setup. Lastly, a streamer setup. Streamers are flies that imitate bait fish or things swimming through the water. If you're trying to transform your tapered leader into a streamer setup, all you would do is trim your tapered leader off probably half or even more than half of the way so that the line that you're tying to your streamer is the thick part of your tapered leader. When we're fishing this, we're stripping it through the water. Fish are going to hit it. So you can fish just the thick part of your tapered leader tied directly to your streamer. Now the problem that I was facing is when I was fishing and I wanted to switch back and forth, I was burning through these things, and these are each like $8 to $12 each, so you don't want to waste them. So one thing I saw somebody else did is he actually carried a spool of 4-pound monofilament with him, and that was all he used for his streamer rods. So if you wanted to do that, you would just take your 4-pound mono, tie the perfection loop like I showed you earlier in the video, connect it to your fly line with a loop-to-loop connection, and you're all set, and that's what I would use for streamer setups. So that's really it, guys. Dry fly setups, nymphing setups, streamer setups. Once you know those 3 methods of tying flies onto your line and rigging it up, you're all set. You can go fishing. So if you learned something from this video, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Stay tuned for more fly fishing videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.